Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Blather 253. General Malaise comes to an end. Not a moment too soon. General Malaise, the Alzheimer's patient in whose name a band of misfits have governed this land by fiat for 4 years, is on his way out the door. Like Jimmy Peanut Carter, he leaves the country in shambles. A degraded military more preoccupied with gender issues than national security, humiliated in Afghanistan and utterly ineffective keeping the Straits of Bab-el-Mandeb and the Red Sea safe for American ships or anyone else's for that matter, with the inevitable disruption of supply lines for Europe and America. A border abandoned to its fate, allowing millions of unvetted illegal aliens, including known and unknown terrorists, to infiltrate our cities and drug traffickers to poison our citizens with hundreds of thousands of deaths caused by fentanyl and terrorist attacks. In 2023 alone, more than twice the number of casualties suffered in 20 years of war in Vietnam, littering our streets. Gas prices doubled by way of quadrupling. Electricity rates are through the roof. Food costs higher than anyone imagined, and Americans struggling to pay bills, never mind save. American credibility in the world is shattered. Petty dictators running amok and traditional allies under attack. Ukraine and Israel suffering the blunt of the Biden administration's incompetence, corruption, and malice. On his way out the door, General Malaise gives America a parting insult in a love fest of pardons for rapists and murderers and medals for traitors and enemies. And I will pause the introduction here, Thomas. Today, he gave the Presidential Medal of Freedom to George Soros.
Yep.
It is another glass ceiling broken. It is the first Presidential Medal of Freedom awarded to a Nazi collaborator in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
It is always darkest before dawn. We are optimistic that America will heal its wounds and rise like a phoenix from the Democrat ashes. We know it's not going to be easy. It's going to take years to restore our military strength, our economic health, the trust of our allies, and the confidence of our people, and to chase the hundreds of terrorist operatives, these cretinous felons allowed to camp in our land. And that work starts on January 20th. General Malaise has 2 weeks of degeneracy left in him. To our friends, relief is coming. To our enemies, the party is over. In 2 weeks, we start to take out the trash. Put the bubble in the fridge. And this is, of course, I believe I said it at the beginning, but then I interrupted myself and lost the trail of thought. Beard Blather. This is Solmontes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from my golden cage in Florida. And this guy here, who is not trying to protect his beard from some kind of magic flu, but as we all know, making sure that he does not expose his face until his beard is restored to full beauty. Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers from Californication, the land that always keeps us guessing what the crap is next. What the crap is next, Thomas? How are you doing in that God-forgotten land?
I'm good. You mentioned the military in your opening statement, and today I was directed to watch an interview of 2 veterans who I'd never heard of. One of them has a huge platform. I think he has 3 million subscribers.
Holy crap.
His guest said that he received an email from Las Vegas bomber,
Yes.
and the guy was talking about he did it because the country's being overrun with Chinese gravitic propulsion drones.
Anti-gravitic propulsion drones.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he says that these drones have an unlimited payload, and
Yes. And unlimited, mind you, you are quoting exactly. This is not your opinion. He did say unlimited payload.
right, and both of these men, when they concluded their show, they said they were going into hiding. Now, this this is embarrassing.
It is.
The Las Vegas police released the guy's manifesto, and the man was mentally ill, and there's no need to sort of give this poor guy, turn him into some kind of spirit, some kind of whistleblower who's exposing the truth about the
Yep.
drones when there's no such thing as a gravitic propulsion. Okay, the guy said that only the United States and China have these drones. The
Yes.
Chinese can't even put together buildings. They can't even. I saw a video of a man who's he had like foot heating pads in his Wellington boots, and they burst into flames and burned his feet. And so there's this video of these two boots standing there with smoke billowing out of them. The Chinese can't even make sandals correctly, flip flops, but the Chinese unveiled their sixth generation fighter, which is a fraud. I mean, anyone with a brain can look at it and say this is nothing. But they have
Yeah.
anti-gravity drones that this guy said that we allow them to hover over the United States, and it was there's all sorts of questions about the authenticity of the
Yeah.
email.
You know that according to these idiots, those drones were controlled from a central base of operations in. I'll give you $1,000 if you can guess it.
I don't know, Mexico.
Area 51.
Oh, okay. See, he also said in the email. He said in the email that the Chinese were launching these drones from offshore submarines.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, okay, for
Because
one
we,
thing,
we, we, we all know the vast fleet of nuclear stealthy submarines the Chinese own.
yeah, exactly. The ones that they introduce in the submarine, all on its own accord, decides to dive to the bottom of the harbor and just nose into the mud and lie there. Um,
Yes.
and the
And they're so silent. They're so silent that they're causing deafness in Wales.
well, and also, the Chinese look at their self diving automatic submarines and they say, "Take it out into the Pacific," and the sailors say, "Yes, sir, I'll do that." I mean, come on, it's. I mean, okay, let's say that there is such thing as a gravitic propulsion drone. How did
Now,
this?
now you want to get funny, don't you?
Well, how did this enlisted man find out this information? Um,
It
you know,
was revealed to him by a leprechaun who appeared to him curiously as he was walking out of a bar in Shamrock, Texas, and with a very peculiar accent, very strong Irish brogue. He related to him the story of the anti-gravitic devices that he had discovered.
well, see,
Then he passed out.
I always want I always want evidence. Now, if this guy had included some top secret documents that he'd stolen from Area 51 or whatever, then and if you could if there was a chain of evidence that leads back to Area 51, then okay, you've at least made a credible argument in that you have papers that you can prove came from Area 51. But when you just say this and then you blow yourself up, why are people even reading this? Why is this?
Yeah, let's
I
face
never
it.
heard.
I'm not, and I'm sure you are not making fun of the guy. Obviously,
No,
we're talking about a very sick puppy. But I have no problem making fun of the fucking idiots out there who are relaying this as if it was some kind of discovery of secret information that people need to know about. They're crazy. They're crazier
well,
than
see,
he was.
it's being covered. It's being covered by mainstream news outlets, and their rationale is that well, we just cover the news. Yeah, but you didn't have anyone, you didn't interview anyone who said this is horse shit. You just repeated it as if it were real. And so now people are out there believing that the Chinese are hovering anti or gravitic propulsion drones over our country that have an unlimited payload capacity. And like, I mean, are you saying the Chinese want a nuclear war? I mean, if we cut off all trade with China, the Chinese economy, it's collapsing as it is, but it would cease
Yes.
to exist in less than 2 weeks. So the Chinese know
Oh,
that.
absolutely. No, but according to these conspiracy mongers, if the Chinese were to put a couple of anti-gravitic drones on top of the White House, we would all surrender and call them Buana.
No, because we have steps in place. If a nuke were to land on the White House and wipe out, if we were to lose all three branches of the federal government in one day, we would still have people who could step forward and govern the country. We have steps for everything, and you know, and we okay. The Japanese thought they could knock us out of the war with an attack on Pearl Harbor, and guess what it did? It made us really angry, and it made us go to war
Off.
with the Japanese.
Yeah, it pissed us off.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody in America would have given a rat's ass about the Japanese screwing in the arse every Filipino, Chinese, Burmese alive. We just didn't care. Had Japan not attacked Pearl Harbor, well, probably they'd be speaking Japanese in Shanghai today.
like I saw a good documentary, and the historian made a very good argument that the greatest strategic decision made in World War II was the American decision to knock Germany out of the war first and then tackle Japan. And the inclination, okay, the Hitler
How did that happen?
Hitler declared war on us on December 11th.
Yeah,
His,
right after we declared war on Japan.
right, and so the Japanese and the Germans were nominal allies, but they didn't exchange any information or cooperation or anything. They fought their wars independently, and so we decided that we needed to take Germany out first. We were fighting Japan, but we weren't um, deciding that we needed to defeat the Japanese, before we defeated the Germans. We did fight, the Battle of Midway in 1943. It was a turning point in the war after which the
Yep.
Japanese couldn't win. But there were generals saying we need to knock Japan out of the war first because they attacked us. And Roosevelt decided after much thought that no, we need to help the Europeans um, defeat the Germans first, the Europeans and the Russians, the Soviets. And the point is that we we always have plans. We sort of mess things up by doing things like electing Biden and you know allowing our borders to be open and all of that. But when an outside force attacks us the way we were attacked both on December 7th, 1941 and September 11th, 2001, we tend to unify, rally, and hit back 10 times as hard. And the Chinese know that. The Chinese don't have gravitic propulsion drones with unlimited capacity payloads hovering over the East Coast. It's not
Yes,
happening.
they don't have a time travel machine either.
Well, it's
Is that level of stupid, frankly.
None of this is happening, and it's distressing to see so many people unquestioningly believe this stuff without asking some pretty pointed questions about considering the source. The source blew himself up, and he claimed in his manifesto that he did this to call attention to all the. Nobody who's ever committed an act of violence has ever called attention to something and that something was then changed for the better. It's never happened in our country's history.
But listen, for all the speculation, let's face it, the guy, for whatever reason, had a psychotic break. Period. Mental illness is not rational. So trying to find the rational explanation as to why this very sick man committed an irrational act is in itself a sign of madness. I'm not going to do it. I'm just sorry that this guy, who by all accounts was not a bad guy, and he served this country loyally, and he flipped. And he did something incredibly stupid and irrational, but that's because mental illness doesn't stop to reason about things.
Also, he believed things. He believed doomsday scenarios that people were pouring into his ears. There's no problem in this country that can't be fixed, and this last election proved it. The country's ready to tackle the problems that everything that's gone wrong in our country has been caused because of slippage. We've slipped. We've allowed things to build up incrementally until we have Venezuelans taking over apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado, and this would have been completely unthinkable even 5-10 years ago. So we're ready to tackle all this stuff, and you can't ever believe the worst case scenarios that you're given. The COVID nonsense should convince you once and for all to never believe the worst case scenarios, that COVID was going to kill everybody. And
you mean I shouldn't believe the scenario of the bird flu wiping off the planet?
No, because there's no evidence that it can. Bird flu is in this country, and we're not.
It's been around for decades, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and climate change. Climate change is going to kill everything on the planet. It's not going to happen. In a very real sense, the notion of a nuclear war between us and whomever. I mean, as most people know, there was a hotline between us and the Soviets in order to prevent nuclear war.
Set up after 62.
Exactly. And okay, 62. Khrushchev blinked. He didn't. He didn't
Maybe
think.
both did.
He didn't think it was worth it
Yeah.
to risk pushing ahead when Kennedy was so adamant. And
Yeah, but he did get the nuclear missiles out of Turkey.
yeah, but the thing is that people complain a lot about the press today, but the press has never been trustworthy. The press, you go back to any of our wars, the press is writing articles that they hope people will read, not
Yeah.
articles that necessarily passing the truth
No,
along.
or passing on propaganda like Durant in World War in the 30s. I mean,
Well, okay,
half of the people who got the what you call it, ah, having a brain fart, but that's because I hate him. Um, Pulitzer Prize
hmm,
were in fact plagiarists and propagandists.
well, you always introduce me as the guy who knows about World War One flamethrowers, and it's pretty interesting because the one source that is absolutely unreliable are newspapers during that period. Um,
Right.
I discovered only through doing my endless research that there's a Hungarian guy who a certain back in the 1930s, he died in 1930 something, and he was credited as the inventor of the flamethrower. And his house in Hungary is now a national monument. The Hungarians had a huge national debate on whether this guy should be honored or not since he invented the flamethrower. He was credited with 41 brilliant wartime inventions, including a special machine gun and an artillery piece. And all of this is false. And I don't know the origin of it, but it was all printed in the newspapers as though it were true. They said that he was on the list of 400 war criminals wanted by the French. Well, I have that list, and he's not on the list. Um,
Right.
Nothing said about this man is true. He did not patent 40. He didn't have 41 patents accepted by the Germans and the Hungarians. I was able to find. You could find patents online. I was able to find 6, and they were patents of weapons that were never used. You when you come up with an idea, you patent it to make
Yes.
sure no one else can get it. But none of his weapons were ever used. And if you look at major online websites, they all credit this guy as the inventor of the flamethrower. Well, the inventor of the flamethrower was a German, and he made his first patent in 1900 when this Hungarian guy was 9 years old. So this guy was not patenting flamethrowers when he was 9 years old. The
No.
German was in his
It,
50s.
it would have been like the Mozart of weapons.
Exactly. And so I belong to a couple of old I think it's one is newspapers.com and one is newspaperarchive.com, I
Yep.
believe. And in terms of looking at articles about the First World War, newspapers are utterly, they're almost worthless. I look at the articles more for bemusement than anything else. And it's always been that way. There was never a golden age of journalism where journalists put the truth ahead of everything else. Utah executed a guy in August, and the press was covering it in Utah, and they had reporters as witnesses, and they were saying that having a reporter witness the execution was part of our country's checks and balances. And it's like, you're kidding. You're not part of the checks and balances.
No.
You're adamant.
They actually believe the fourth branch bullshit.
Yeah.
Oh God.
No, and that's ridiculous because
Yeah.
this whole broadcast.
The fourth branch is where the monkeys hang out.
Yeah, the whole broadcast of this Utah execution of a guy who he sexually assaulted his mother-in-law and then murdered her with a knife and sexually assaulted her with a knife until she died. And the whole broadcast was in opposition to the death penalty because this guy had changed. That was 25 years ago. He's a different man.
Now he was a benefactor of mankind.
Well,
it's like the Birdman of Alcatraz, you know.
Yeah. That's another thing. I mean, it's just you're going to find accurate reporting from individuals who may be scientists or they just be laypersons who just decided to do their own research. But generally speaking, especially when it comes to issues like the death penalty, you're not going to get accurate reporting. When it comes to wars, you're not going to get accurate reporting. When it comes to politics, you're not going to get accurate reporting. When
it comes to the Menendez brothers, you're not going to get any kind of accurate reporting.
Yeah, I mean, and it's always been this way, and
true.
People are lamenting the fact that the mainstream media is dwindling. Well, that's their own fault. They did it to themselves.
Yeah. I'm not gonna cry a single tear for the assholes any more than I'm gonna cry a single tear for that fanatical anti-Semitic piece of shit that gave us the mullahs, the military weakness, stagflation, and if I recall, who praised the democratic elections that brought Chavez to power in Venezuela, and wrote a famous book, Peace in Palestine, Not Apartheid, creating by his own nuts the myth of Israeli apartheid. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah. My only question with Jimmy Carter is somebody can please go and poke the son of a bitch and make sure he's dead. I want to make sure he doesn't wake up from this one.
Didn't they have his state funeral today?
Yeah, they were going to bring him to the Capitol's rotunda, which has been home to many an asshole over the years. So what's another one? And flags in the country are at half-mast. Well, the hell. It's the death of a former president, I understand, but I don't share it. I think that this guy should be honored by a whole platoon of civilians giving him the French salute.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's sort of like everything is being done very perfunctorily. Like it was like the attitude I'm sensing is more like, geez, what took him so long?
Yeah, well, that I feel that way too.
Well, especially given his final months or years or whatever, where he was just like this bizarre. He was like one of those Mexican mummies, the ones that are you go underground into the grottos, and they have them up in these niches on the wall, and they're all leaning over with their mouths agape. That's what he looked like.
Yeah, he made it to vote for Kakala, But he really, it was a big disappointment for him when he found out he wasn't breathing anymore, because he wanted to make sure he was there at the White House when a Nazi collaborator got a Presidential Medal of Freedom. That would have been the highlight of his life.
Well, didn't Biden also give Hillary the the
Yes,
the same award? What
yes.
did she do to earn that
Uh,
award?
Yeah, well, I mean, not everybody can use their own server in public service and get away with it. She was given the award for her contributions to inter-office communications while in government. Another one who got it was Mitt Romney. He got it because he redefined what it means to be a loser. Um, I'm surprised Liz Cheney didn't get her, did she? Because it was a long list. I didn't read all of it because I was already getting an upset stomach.
Well, but
And
see,
on the trail of his pardons, I mean, did he pardon a woman who was unjustly jailed in California because her invalid daughter wasn't going to school in an act of injustice that cried for some kind of intervention to redress the wrong? No, no. He pardoned people who make that lovely son-in-law you just described look like uh, 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 I don't know, Einstein.
well, he pardoned people who did all the same crimes that Biden himself has done.
Or wishes to, or wishes he had.
No, I there was something Biden did something. He did something with the Vatican. He had, I think, as Biden, like Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy wrote a letter to the Pope explaining to the Pope that he'd always been a good Catholic, and like the Vatican sent back one of these "Thank you for your letter. We received it" responses.
It's automatic.
But Kennedy was panicking. He was looking for absolution. Kennedy called in a literal witch doctor to try and cure him of his
Yeah.
glioblastoma. And
I wonder why he didn't go to be treated in Cuba. Democrats used to give you the Cuban health system as an example to follow, and especially their expertise in curing impossible cancers. So,
well, not even Mike Moore goes to Cuba. Nobody goes to Cuba. But you know, Biden had some sort of communication with the Vatican that let me know that he's starting to worry, and well, he should. Um,
yeah, he's gonna. If there is a hell, if there is anything true in the image of the afterlives in the Catholic faith, he's gonna burn in hell with a red stick up his ass for eternity.
well, see, it's really amazing to me that you can live this life of criminality and then think you can, just by sort of okay, it's sort of like Biden's used to bribing people, and I think he thinks he can bribe God. He can.
Well, considering the kind of asset he's been surrounded by most of his life, he probably thinks that God can indeed be bribed. We're just discussing the terms.
Yeah, it's such a weird era, like such a bizarre like as of today. Okay, the election was exactly a month ago, right?
Yeah. Well, tomorrow it's going to be a month ago.
People are still putting up their sad and angry and outraged videos about the Trump victory. It's like this is still going on and on and on and on.
And it's going to go on for 4 years. The people who lectured you and me and everybody else endlessly for 4 years about our need to accept the results and shut the fuck up, uh, of course, didn't accept the results in 2016, and they're not accepting them now.
Well, they're calling on the Democrats to not certify Trump as president.
Yeah, good. Give it a try. I don't give a shit. If you think there is the slightest chance, I would really enjoy uh, to have one representative and one senator, both of them Democrats, of course, uh, question the results and the electors of every single freaking state, all 50 of them. And let's send it to the full House and the full Senate and see if they get the two-thirds Senate to reject those electors. And if it takes a whole fucking week, let's do it. And let's slowly but surely ratify every state after they've tried and confirm Trump. And then I'm going to laugh in their faces for 20 years.
Well, the thing is that they're demanding this not because they think it's not a valid election, but because they oppose Trump's policies. So once again, they're everything. I saw a video of Obama, Grandpa Obama, with his gray hair, and
Sorry to hear that.
he was giving a speech about um, how what happens when a political party does anything to win, and it uses the legal system illegally and the justice system. And he was talking, and all of a sudden he just stopped, and he like it he like he started stuttering. He's reading from a teleprompter, of course. My guess is he hadn't seen the speech before, because he suddenly realized that he was describing his own party. So
Yeah.
he started stuttering. He started clawing at his mouth, and it took him a long time to get back on track. I mean, he had that moment where he realized, oh my God, they're all
Oh,
going to
fuck.
think I'm talking about our party.
Yeah. Well, he was. He was.
He was, but he was accusing the other party of doing that, and even he, in his infinite disgustingness, realized that he wasn't going to be able to sell this one, and that everyone was instantly going to say, "Holy God, you're talking about your own party. Shut up."
There's only one thing that Obama could do right now, and as a matter of fact, he should have done it years ago, which
Yeah,
is
be
to shut
careful.
the fuck up, walk into the horizon, and disappear from American politics.
Well, didn't he buy a house in D.C.?
Oh, a mansion,
The
$16 million he paid. And that's before the building the wall around it and essentially redoing the McMansion in there. But yeah, I believe he's the only president in over a century and a half to remain in Washington.
Yeah.
But notice that Republican presidents understand that when you're done, whether you lost your reelection or you served your second term, you disappear and
Yeah.
you do not interfere with your successor, whether your successor be from your own party or the opposition. And you only answer when called for public service, and that's it. Democrats, Carter, Clinton, Obama, and I doubt Biden because he's technically brain dead, but they do the opposite. They try to undermine their successors
Mhm.
publicly. The first one to do this in the most obscene manner was Jimmy Carter,
Mm-hmm.
who was constantly crusading against American foreign policy during the Reagan years and during the Bush years, and making alliances and working together with the worst fucking scum of the earth, from Hugo Chavez to the Russians to the mullahs. And that has to end. That has to end. The gentleman's agreement in place before Carter is what should rule. You're done. Move out. Let your successor do his thing and challenge him on the next elections.
Well, again, it's up to the voters to stop electing the wrong person. And okay, let's say that the Democrats, let's say they no longer have primaries. Let's say they keep doing this where they basically keep shoving candidates down people's throats. Well, don't vote, or vote for the other side. Like teach your side that you've got to do it the right way. I keep hearing.
They have to go pro brain.
I keep hearing more and more Democrats. It just suddenly dawned on them that, okay, in the case, what they always said was that Trump cracks the whip, and since it's a cult, Republicans all do exactly what he wants. That's true in the Democrat Party, but it's not true in the Republican Party. And
I was going to say
we saw that we saw that with the H-1B visas and the speaker election. Republicans are always open for debate among themselves, and in the case of the Democratic Party, I guess Kamala just swore in Bernie Sanders, and she told him as a joke to just shut up and do as he's told. And it's like, wow. Do you know?
And he's not a Democrat.
Do you know that the microphone is on? Yeah, he's an independent, but for all
but to him, the Democrats are capitalist pigs.
Well, also they screwed him twice, but he still always.
I'm surprised they allowed him to run at all.
He always votes with them, so I mean he knows what side of the bread is buttered.
Oh, and if that was ever into question, there's always the possibility of mansion number 7th, and you get him on board.
Mm-hmm.
The guy has zero principles.
Yeah.
Zero. Yeah. Like all of these guys. I mean, there are corrupt Republicans, to be sure. They are Republicans without a moral compass, absolutely. But every fucking Democrat is a corrupt son of a bitch without a moral compass.
Yeah,
all of them.
They don't seem to believe in applying any of their ideology to themselves. And Republicans, for the most part, like you said, there are corrupt. There's weirdos going into public bathrooms trying to solicit strangers. But they're a small minority. I mean, in the case of the Democrats, I mean, one of their big heroes, Barney Frank, he was like an unending, like corruption and scandal factory.
Yes. And Chris Dodd?
And what was that guy's name? He was on the Ways and Means Committee. He was black, but he had like slick back hair, and he spoke in this thick sort of Bronx accent.
I know exactly what you're talking about. He's another graduate of Howard University, the son of a bitch.
Yeah. And he didn't pay his taxes for like 30 years, and the Congress did that to him.
Yeah. Imagine if he had been a Republican. But you see, Republic it doesn't get off into that because Republicans are fairly good at cleaning their own house. And a lot of people complain about that. I don't. Like George Santos. A lot of people complain that Republicans got rid of George Santos. They should have kept him. No, they should have gotten rid of the son of a bitch even earlier. And the fact that they did is one of the reasons why I still support them.
Well,
You cannot
also,
tolerate corruption in your midst.
okay, also the Republicans are gathering behind Trump, which they didn't do in 2016. He was fighting his own party as much as he was fighting the Democrats for his first
Yes.
term. And it's going to be different this time around, but that's because a huge number of the right people either resigned or were voted out. And, you know, um, in the case of the
Or show their ass like Liz Cheney. Not
in
a
the
pretty
case
view, I can say.
in the case of the Democrats, there was just this nightmarish clip from Nancy Pelosi on her aircraft, um, greeting everybody as she was flying back to the Capitol, and she looked either drunk out of her mind or high. I mean, her eyes are these
Both.
little slits, and plus
Well,
she
she was bringing San Francisco values to DC, so probably both drunk and drugged.
no, and she's like 85 years old. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
what have you done in your 85 years to benefit anybody other than yourself and your husband?
Well, she did back JFK.
Well, okay.
She did. Uh, the woman is useless, but she has been a good soldier. Remember that for the Democrats, they do not prize integrity or contributions to the nation. They prize loyalty,
Yeah.
blind freaking loyalty,
Yeah.
and she has delivered that blind loyalty to the Democrats, and they adore her. It is quite telling to see how they treat her, knowing what we know about her insider trading, about her undermining our military in Iraq. What she did, bringing resolutions against Turkey, just as we did it Interlink to send our advanced troops to northern Iraq, which we couldn't do, which delayed those Marines, ended up 3 weeks floating around the fucking Mediterranean and the Red Sea to finally get to disembark 3.5 weeks later. And that had an effect in the immediate phase after the fall of the Iraqi army, because the troops that we needed on the streets to keep order were floating about thanks to Nancy Pelosi.
Well, also when she went to visit Assad, she took Tom
Yes,
Lantos. She took Tom Lantos with her, and Lantos, after Lantos died, the Kurds said that Lantos tried to convince them to launch an uprising against the Turks, the Iraqi Kurds, not the Turkish Kurds, not the PKK. And
yes,
because what he wanted the Turks to invade Iraq and destabilize the country while our troops were.
yes,
Now, Tom Lantos was always praised as this moral epicenter because he was a Holocaust survivor. Well, what he did there was treason. He was trying to get American troops
yes.
killed. Um, so it's like, where's your morality, Mr. Lantos?
Never had it.
Yeah.
You see, the problem with having been a victim of the Holocaust and all the jazz, and it's a difficult subject for me, as you know. Uh, Damn it, it affected my mother's family, therefore my own. I say my mother's family because obviously I'm too young to have been a witness to most of this. I only saw the aftermath from the distance. So it's a difficult subject. But yeah, some of the persecuted were sons of bitches in their own right.
Well, see, that's the thing. How heroic is it to have been rounded up, sent to an extermination camp, and survived? I mean, it's admirable in the sense that you did survive, but it doesn't make you a hero. It's not something, you
No,
know, you
some
didn't.
some some of the Jews deported from Rome to concentration camp were high-ranking officials of the fascist party of Mussolini,
Yeah.
who thought that because of that they were immune, and the Germans thought otherwise.
Well, this is the
And
thing.
as Italy was falling, they grabbed all of these fascist leaders and sent them to concentration camps because they were Jews as well. Now, does that make any of them a good person?
No, and Lantos always wore his status as a Holocaust survivor on his sleeve, and he used it as a shield to protect himself against criticism. So he very cynically used it, and
Yeah.
you know, once you start using your victimhood as a shield against criticism, then I think that makes you
Then you can question.
even greater criticism. Um, it's like when people, you hear this all the time today. Some leftist gets in trouble for something they did or said, and then they start whining about how they're getting death threats. Well, welcome to the club. Or they're I have anxiety, I have depression, I have PTSD. Well, so what? You're still a butthole.
Yeah,
If
you have PTSD because they ran out of soy latte at Starbucks, you son of a
yeah,
bitch.
no,
It's
and you know, I don't know. It's a pretty amazing. Like the world of Nancy Pelosi is gone. Okay, Assad is gone. Um, Tom Lantos is gone. George W. Bush is gone. We're in a completely different world. She's still here, but she hasn't adapted. And the world is changing very rapidly right now. The
yeah.
Germans and the French just sent envoys to foreign ministers to meet the new government in Syria, um, and started giving them orders, which wasn't a good look. Um, I have no
I
doubt
mean,
that
they
if we
sent the maid. The Germans sent the maid dressed as a cowgirl with hiking boots.
well, this is how she always dresses. This is her.
I know, well, that's an expression of what's between her ears.
Well, no, this shows her personal integrity.
Yeah, and that stupid cow dressed poorly for a rock concert goes to Syria and tries to shake the hand of her host. Now, I've been dealing with protocol and with encounters with people with several countries for the better part of the last 40 years. It is your obligation when you go to a country to follow the customs of the host. You're not surrendering your integrity. You are not turning against the values of your society. No, you're following a well established practice. When he comes to your place, he follows your customs. When you go to his place, you follow his customs. It's not okay for a man to cross his legs in a meeting on Saudi Arabia showing the sole of his foot, of his shoe. It's not okay. You're telling your host to go fuck himself, essentially. So you keep the sole of your shoes on the freaking floor while you're having this conversation. Of course, if you go into a Bedouin tent, you're going to get your shoes off. No, you don't send a minister on a miniskirt to have an interview with, say, the Pope. That'd be okay.
Well, see, especially since, as far as we can tell, the former Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani is making a real effort to make himself more presentable to the West. And not just in his appearance, he now wears suits and ties. The Iranians don't wear ties because a tie is Jewish or something.
Or some crap like that. Yeah, the tie maker is a Jew.
Right, but he wears suits and ties. The situation in Syria, there's no. I mean, we keep hearing that he's going to impose Sharia, but they're rebuilding a Jewish temple in Damascus.
They're rebuilding the synagogue and inviting the community to return.
Right.
And live free of persecution in Damascus.
Right. So that sort of goes.
That's imposing Sharia law and
right. So as of yet, okay, this is a very fragile stage right now. Okay.
Yes.
And a smart person wouldn't go there in her hiking boots, try to shake his hand and start giving him orders, I have no doubt.
If she comes to my house like that, to a formal dinner, I'll have the maid throw her out.
Well, I have no doubt that if Trump decides to send an envoy to Syria to meet the leaders, they're not going to give him marching orders. They're going to ask him, what is it you need? And, what would you like from us? That's what's going to happen.
Yes.
And, I mean,
this is like the idiot who tried to hack the Queen of England.
Yep.
I mean, protocol. You go to England. They invite you to Buckingham Palace and you go past the Queen then or the King now. You don't shake hands unless the King initiates it.
Exactly. You wait. You take your cue.
You don't leave. You don't go in there with your head like this. It has nothing to do. I've read so many stupid opinions, Freudian opinions, because they don't want to touch a woman because they see the woman as an object. Oh, go fuck yourselves.
Well, look, what everybody needs to understand is that Jawlani is walking a tightrope right now. And the last thing he needs are for his own people, because believe me, okay, I've seen his security forces going into the various areas to arrest, the former Assad government members who were.
They did that in Damascus today.
Right. And they seem pretty professional, but these guys are, for all intents and purposes, jihadists. The last thing Jawlani needs is to give them a sense that he's totally betrayed them. So he's walking a tightrope right now where he wants the Western world to invest in Syria, and he doesn't want to have a goddamn mutiny and a civil war on his hands. So,
and he wants to deal with Israel.
Exactly. So how about we help the guy out? He hasn't done anything. He hasn't committed any atrocities yet. So how about we help the guy out and we we take it one baby step at a
One,
time.
one baby step at a time, and if he steps offline, it drop the hammer on them. But
Exactly.
the thing is, like right now, he wants Iran out of Syria. He wants a deal with Israel. He wants Israel to help him in the areas around the Golan Heights and in southern Syria. He wants the Turks out, and he wants a free and open Syria where everybody can be in peace and practice their own religion. I don't know how much of this is fantasy. I don't know how much of this is posturing, but I do want him to survive long enough to show me if this is posturing or not.
Exactly. And as we both pointed out, he doesn't have the power to turn Syria into an emirate. The
No,
Kurds alone could defeat him. The Syrian Democratic Forces have the backing of the U.S., so we could defeat him. I don't think. I mean, this is a guy who survived 30 odd years in that world, and he knows who he knows how to make friends, how to make enemies. I'm absolutely positive that that lightning fast attack on Assad's people was helped by the Gulf Arabs,
yes.
both on the outside and on the inside. And
You can see it in the behavior of the Gulf Arabs at the summit of the Arab League in Qatar on the eve of uh, Assad's demise, when essentially they decided that Assad had to go,
mm,
and within 48 hours he was gone.
yeah,
Take a look at the positions that they took in Doha, and you will see that indeed the Gulf Arabs decided that Assad uh, had to leave, and that meant only one thing.
yeah.
That meant HTS marching into Damascus, and they opened the way for him.
And I think there was technical help in the form of Assad's people not knowing anything, not getting any orders, not, just this state of massive confusion that had never existed before in the Syrian Arab army,
Yes.
and the Russians. So this is a great opportunity, but everybody has to be very careful. I think the smart thing to do would be to help Jelani out. And like you said, if he goes back on his word, then we know we've dealt with people like that before. It's not going to be a problem.
Yes.
But
Paraphrasing Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And just the fact that this guy has gotten rid of all his jihadist attire and is now appearing in public wearing a suit and tie. And okay, when the Christmas tree was burned in one of the Christian areas and the
Yes.
Christians marched in protest, a representative from HTS came out and he held up a crucifix to show them that he had nothing against Christianity. And he said, we've investigated. It wasn't Syrians who did this. It was outsiders trying to start something, and we're going to find them. So when you have a so-called jihadist holding up a crucifix, that tells you something. And
You know what it tells me? When and we discussed this in a different context. When reality contradicts my prejudice, I cannot change reality, so I have to change my prejudice. Uh, Facts on the ground trump your analysis.
yeah,
When you see, like you say, a jihadist holding a crucifix, telling Christians, we want to make sure that you're okay here, we're going to get the people who did this to you. Holy shit. They didn't have to do that.
No, they didn't even have to send a representative. So in Assad, the civil war started because Assad sent his men out to mow down people marching in protest.
Yeah, ordered the army to shoot down people protesting for democracy, and half the army said "fuck you" and the ghost of your father.
The Western press tried to make it sound like the new government, the transitional government, was doing that in Latakia. But what they left out was that the transitional government sent men to arrest Syrian wanted, former Assad members. Those men were ambushed, and 15 of them were killed. So they dispersed the crowds, which is, they didn't disperse
Oh,
firing in them. They dispersed them, by firing over their heads and
yeah,
threatening them and all that. So the fact that 15 were ambushed and killed, that's a very that's the crux of the matter. And to leave it out of the article and just say that, oh, they just dispersed crowds because they didn't like protests.
mhm.
No. And it just goes back to what I
Yeah.
was saying about
and
dishonor.
and the press reports weren't clear on the nature of those 15 either.
No,
And those were all high-ranking officers in Assad's regime with blood on their hands.
exactly.
The other thing they're doing in Latakia is the Russians are now trying to take weapons and all kinds of shit from the airbase to Tartus so that it could be put on ships. And I'm afraid that the North Syrian government is not too keen on allowing them to take anything anywhere or march with weapons around Syria. So we're going to have some kind of confrontation
Yeah.
there any moment now. Any moment now. And I
Well,
like it. I'm okay with that.
yeah. I mean, the Russians helped the Syrians by leveling cities, by bombing civilians, and that's what the Russians always do. They kill civilians because they are unable to fight trained armed combatants. And the current government wants them out. They want to stay, and it's like, okay, if I mean, okay, stay and fight, and let's see who wins. Despite the Russians having aircraft and tanks and everything, I don't see them winning anything. They're certainly not winning against what? Okay, the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians made a deal with the new government. If the
Yes.
Russians decide to stay, then my guess is the new government is going to call in Ukrainian drone operators, and
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah,
basically what?
I think like me, you're old enough to remember when Putin was going to use Syrian soldiers and weapons in Ukraine.
Yeah, how that worked
Remember
out.
that?
Mm-hmm.
That was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was expecting the major shipment of soldiers and weapons that were going to swing the war in Ukraine. Um, Everybody was wondering whether Erdogan was going to allow it. Of course, he didn't. Uh, and you and I had a conversation on air, and I told you the problem is that uh, the reason that Turkey has control of the Bosphorus from the Treaty of San Remo is with Turkey's compromise to keep weapons out of the Black Sea. If Turkey were to allow Syrian soldiers and weapons through Turkey into the Black Sea to go fight in Ukraine, that would be a violation of that treaty, and the very possession of the Bosphorus would be in question. Something that Erdogan didn't want to do. Not to mention the fact that Erdogan doesn't like Putin one way or the other. And right now, did you notice he's been asking for Crimea to be returned to Ukraine and Russia to retire to the borders of 1991 as a basis for any negotiation. Erdogan? Yes, Erdogan. People don't understand the dynamics of the area. Of course, he wants grain exporting Ukraine on the other side of its shores and not an expansive Russia. Duh. How difficult is that to understand? But when it comes to Syria, 2 years ago, only 2 years ago, Syria was going to send soldiers and weapons to Russia to fight in Ukraine. And now Ukraine is sending weapons to Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, Assad's fall was not predicted by anybody. You know, all the people who are now stroking their beards and analyzing what's happening, they did not predict it. You know, I didn't predict it because I wasn't watching.
I didn't predict the exact timing, but I did say specifically that Assad was a walking corpse. That is not a question of whether he was going to be removed or not. It was a question of when. I didn't see it coming this fast, but I knew he was a goner.
No, I mean, I wasn't watching Syria just because, you know, the news out of Syria was pretty much the same every day. But I did know that HTS, once they wiped out the Turkish had they bundled all the jihadist groups together and called them the Syrian National Army or the Syrian Liberation Army or something like that. HTS launched 21 simultaneous offensives in the same day and wiped out the entire body in one day. So I knew they were capable of you know, very important strategic actions. And the fact that the Syrians had never been able to get them out of Idlib province, you know, I figured we'd be hearing from them again someday.
Eventually. The other thing is, I all of this started with Erdogan launching a campaign in northern Syria, allegedly to stop PKK from hiding in northern Syria. I knew some kind of shit was coming out of it. I never expected, and I expected the Turks to get a bloody nose. But what happened was on a scale that bears no proportion to the original event. It's like they poked a lion, or they showed.
Yeah, the Turks.
Yeah,
the Turks launched a couple of incursions into the Kurdish territory, and at one point, the Kurds were using anti-tank missiles that were producing what looked like small atomic blasts. And at the time, I said, you know, these have been modified, and the Kurds did admit that these were modified. They said they modified them themselves. Not a chance. They got these weapons from somebody else, and you know, at some point, the Turks lost. I think they lost a total of 22 Leopard 2 tanks, and you know, there was this whole period where they were the British press was calling Turkey tanks, you know, Turkey's 100 million pound embarrassment, or Turkey's 1 million pound embarrassment, or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, the Turks had their noses bloodied on several occasions, and you know, the fact that Erdogan replaced all the military heads with Islamists who, you know, pose no threat to him, meaning they didn't know how to fight wars. And because the Turkish army is required by the constitution to overthrow Islamist governments and be the guardian of secularism. So Erdogan got around that by installing Islamists in every important position, but that meant that the fighting capabilities of the Turkish armed forces just went because they were loyal to Erdogan, but they didn't know how to fight. And everything that happened was predictable except for the overthrow of Assad and the speed at which it happened. So
Yeah, yes. Again, people talk a lot about these things. They don't realize how many factors are at play. Turkey is not an Islamist country,
no,
period.
but Erdogan is an Islamist himself, but Turkey is an Islamist.
Exactly. Erdogan is an Islamist who's like the little engine that couldn't. He's been trying to take Turkey down an Islamist path since the early 90s. The first time he tried it, he was thrown out of government and thrown into jail. Now he came back with a softer platform with more emphasis on social justice and other leftard bullshit, and a more compromising tone, where he does have a discourse that he uses particularly to people in eastern Turkey. That is his base and makes him win elections. Uh, but staying the crap away from Istanbul and Ankara, where people are secularists who are definitely not sold into this and want to go back to Kemal Ataturk's ideal of a neutral state, or actually not neutral, militantly secularist state. There is a very high probability that the next elections are going to be won by Imamoglu, and we'll see the last of Erdogan. He's running out of steam. And Imamoglu is a chap from Istanbul who will quickly move to restore secularism in Turkey. So part of the problem is that there are a lot of people on our side of the divide. By our side, I mean the U.S. and Europe, who are themselves a bunch of bigots, who see Turkey as the enemy because they're not Christian, and would love. I would definitely put Nancy Pigliosi in this crowd, and would love to cause a rift. And I even hear calls for expelling Turkey from NATO, and I don't think they understand the implications of such a foolish move.
Also, there's no mechanism for expelling any member.
No, and as long as Turkey fulfills its obligations to NATO, I don't know what they can do. But they want to do it, and we've had this argument. We've had it when Giscard d'Estaing came out with that abomination of a European constitution. Uh, we've had it. We do have it from the Vatican every year because Turks are not European. Because to be a European, you have to be Christian, which is going to be sounding great for the Muslims of the Balkans. These people are idiots, dangerous idiots. I wait anxiously for the day where we can welcome an anti-Islamist government in Turkey and restore it to its Ataturk splendor. And I understand that while the current situation is not in any way ideal, it is still not an Islamist country. Turkey is a place of the most varied expressions with peoples that are so different from Istanbul to the east, to Anatolia. I mean, come on, how many Islamist countries do you know where women go with dental floss bikinis to the beach? Do you know any?
Nope.
Well, then I guess Turkey is not an Islamist country because that's what you'll find in the beaches of Anatolia. So it's Kelly saying, doesn't Turkey have Eastern Orthodox? Actually, yes, Greek Orthodox in particular. Uh, there was in the 50s, I think, a major riot that ended up with many of the Greek neighborhood in Istanbul moving out. But yeah, you still have a Greek Orthodox population, you have a large Jewish population, much larger than people realize. You have a large percentage of the population that is nominally Muslim. And I mean nominally because they don't give a flying fuck. They do not observe the tenets of the religion, and they will tell you in private, well, no, you have to be Muslim because, in this society, you have to be a Muslim. But my ancestors were not. Nearly all of the descendants of the original Seljuk Turks um, are not real Muslims. Um, like so many in this country are nominally Catholic or nominally Methodist, but when was the last time they went to church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Poser asks, is the EU Council presidency moving to Poland this year? It's not moving to Poland this year, it already has. The rotating presidency of the European Commission uh, at the end of the year, it ended Hungary's turn, now it's Poland. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't change anything, it is a purely symbolic thing. Orban couldn't accomplish little shit as president of the European not as president of the country that presided over the European Commission. And this little socialist stooge in Poland is not going to do much better. What country is going to supply soldiers to Russia next? They're thinking very much. Apparently, the North Koreans are dragging their foot and demanding more planes. Right now, the bargain is one Su-25 for every 1,000 soldiers. Did you know that?
No.
That's the trade. Russia gives a little rocket man a fighter bomber, and little rocket man gets rid of 1,000 mouths to feed, literally. And they tend to last every 1,000 North Koreans, maybe 3 days in the Kursk region before they go to meet their maker. It's an well, no, they don't have a maker. They're atheists, all of them. So who else is next? They're running out of options at this rate. Putin may have to launch another draft, and considering how the last two went, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. The average Russian draftee can run faster than the recruiters.
Well, see, Putin always presented himself literally as the savior of Russia, and he always took credit for saving Russia from the terrible 1990s and Yeltsinism and Gorbachevism and all of that. But the current societal and economic conditions in Russia today are horrific. That um, the value of the ruble has dropped through the floor. Everyday groceries are impossible to find. There's no civic services. So you can't get any gas in your apartment, so you freeze to death during the winter. You can't get any water. So Putin is if there were to be an overthrow of Putin, it's closer now than it's ever been. And Putin's all of Putin's his oligarchical allies. I mean, these guys have been hit just as hard as the average people. Their money's worth much less. Their their goods have been confiscated overseas. Their yachts, their dachas, all of that,
Yeah.
and Putin has no escape plan. He has no, he has nothing to tell anybody except keep doing what I tell you to do. And the number of killed and wounded is so gigantic that it's now starting to affect everybody, including and okay, in the case of Moscow, the Ukrainians are now hitting Moscow with their drones, and people know that all the anti-aircraft defense systems are protecting Putin's dachas. They're he's got like 10 per dacha because he can't bear to lose any of his precious personal skating rinks and personal Olympic sized pools and all of that. So it's people thought that Assad couldn't possibly fall. They're saying that Putin can't possibly fall, but anything's possible, really, especially given the circumstances.
Maybe the question is not whether he rises or falls. Maybe the question if he's going to be alive next week.
Yeah. No, I mean the Russians are so violent. I mean, I don't know if you remember, there was the Russian ambassador was giving some presentation at a Russian museum in Turkey, and his Turkish bodyguard shot and killed him on the air. And
Yeah.
The Russians were sort of mildly upset, but violence is a way of life in Russia.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. The Russian mafiosos who came to the U.S., they were unlike any other mafiosos in that they began with horrific violence. They issued
Worse than the Colombians.
Yeah, well, almost everybody else, even including the Mexican cartels, if the cartels have branched out into kidnapping and holding for ransom and all that, they'll go to your house and knock on the door and say, "Come with me." The Russians would go to your house, knock on the door, shoot your wife in the face, and then kidnap you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And cut your daughter to pieces.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the Russian mafia, I mean, all the predictions were the Russian mafia was going to wipe out all the other organized crime. It never happened. You don't hear about the Russian mafia anymore.
No. They've gone legit in Coney Island.
Yeah, I mean, they used to own all the strip clubs out here, and now, as far as I can tell, the strip clubs are all owned by Chinese. So the Russians either sold them off or were forced out. I don't know which.
Or moved up the scale. Maybe now they have construction companies. Mm, it's a regular progression for them. But anyway, the thing is that yeah, they were among the most violent people, and you mentioned how Putin portrays himself as the savior of Russia after the crisis of '95. Well, the savior of Russia in the crisis of '95 was Bill Clinton,
Mm-hmm.
with massive, massive, a package of massive foreign aid to prop up the Russian economy and prevent it from collapsing entirely. billions of dollars that essentially gave Putin a foothold. And people don't remember that, do they?
No, no.
When did Congress approve that?
Well, see, Putin was a screw up from the beginning. You remember when the Chechens took over the Moscow? It was a
The
theater.
theater, the theater, 500 dead.
Yeah, well, they died from the Russians pumping in Valium gas, and
Yes.
this is a theater where everyone was sitting in chairs, and what happened was they fell unconscious like this, and they if they didn't overdose on the gas and die, they died of suffocation, because once you're completely unconscious and you're sitting like that, it cuts off your airway. And also the Kursk, I think the Kursk submarine accident happened under Putin's watch. And
yes, definitely.
The several crew members were alive, and every country in the world often offered help, and the Russians refused help until everyone was dead.
Yep. And the string of fuck ups with the Kuznetsov also happened during his watch.
Yep.
Putin has been the only victory he claimed was the victory over the Islamists in Chechnya. But there were no Islamists left. What he did in Chechnya was a Nazi Germany style war of annihilation.
Hmm.
It was ethnic cleansing with capital Gothic Cyrillic characters. What he did to Grozny, it's difficult to describe.
Oh, he leveled it. He leveled Grozny.
He leveled the city. The women, children. He killed everybody and their mothers, literally, and then sent in Russians to reoccupy the place. Uh, the Chechen diaspora caused by that was one of the principal sources of meat for the jihadist movements around the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Still today. Still today. And there's nothing he ever did that didn't screw up Russia more than it already was.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're approaching 1 million casualties in a country of 175 million people.
Mm-hmm.
That means that 1 in 175 people in Russia was either dead or wounded in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
1 for every 175. Can the American people even comprehend what that means?
No, and not only that, the people who somehow managed to get back are left with, I mean, they're basically, they're broken, they're ruined, and they're going to spend the rest of their lives in a constant state of mental collapse and alcoholism, and
the Russian life.
Well, the war has been catastrophic for Russia, as bad as it's been for Ukraine. Ukraine will bounce back. Russia is going to take maybe 40 years to bounce back from this war, if it ever does.
If it ever does. There is, as for 3 days now, Ukraine finally stopped the flow of gas in the gas pipes from Russia to Europe. A lot of people are going to ask, why didn't they do it earlier? After all, the Ukrainians were allowing the transportation of gas from Russia to Europe that was fueling the Russian economy with 200 billion a year. That was being used by Russia to attack Ukraine. It seems it definitely counter. The problem is the Ukrainians couldn't afford to do it because the Europeans couldn't live without that gas and would have turned on Ukraine on a dime over that. So it was a very, very uh, delicate balancing act. And now that Europe is replaced most of the gas supplied by Russia with other sources, and it's still working on additional alternatives. By the way, people don't know, but about half of the gas consumed in Europe now comes from the US. And it's one of the reasons why my gas bill yesterday was $1,200 for a tank fill up that used to be $300 2 years ago. I'm livid.
Yeah.
$1,200. I mean, come on. Do you have any idea how many people in Southside Virginia are going to be freezing their asses off because of this?
Well, this is the thing that what the Democrats did with Biden is that they finally brought the consequences of bad decisions to the front door of every American,
Yes, yes.
and they couldn't
That's
afford
exactly.
to do that. Um,
Now
you
they're
know,
going to blame Trump, because we're getting the bill now, and oh well, you see, Trump came in and the gas is more expensive. No, no, no. We're paying for Biden's sins 3 years ago.
also nobody's going to believe it this time around. It's like, okay, they said that the Trump economy was actually the Obama economy, and then when Biden took over, all the problems Biden was facing was all Trump's fault, and nobody buys it. It's this sort of lying is. I've been struck by what I've realized about so much of all of this is that it's very childish. Yes, the man who blew himself up in Vegas was insane, but it's also a very childish gesture.
Yes.
The New Orleans fucker who drives his car into a crowd and then jumps out and is immediately shot to death by the police after firing only 2 shots. What he did was evil, but it's also childish. And
Yeah, but he's following the rules, the manual set out in a call for global jihad. Remember Abu Musab al-Suri?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's what he describes that a jihadist needs to do, and that's why this is what they do in Christmas markets in Germany, in streets in Nice or New Orleans or London or Brussels or Barcelona. It's happening all around the world and will continue to happen because these guys are following the script.
right. But jihadism is childish. It doesn't have a
Oh, yeah.
prayer working, um,
Mm.
especially in the West. I mean, you had people warning us all the time that you know years ago when okay Muslims have they're no longer the favorite children of the left. So for a while, everyone was bowing and scraping. Muslims had to have feet washing stations put in colleges, and they had to be allowed to go clean and pray 5 times a day and all of
Yeah.
that.
If they do that, I hope they do ass kissing stations so I can go over there and they can kiss my ass.
Okay, and now it was transsexuals, but that's falling out of favor. There's a transsexual influencer who all this person did. This is a man who says he's a woman, and he presents as a man. He wears he has long hair and he wears dresses. He goes to restaurants, and if they call him sir, he asks for the manager and makes a big stink. And so now this guy is so well known that as soon as either he's turned away at the door, or they make it impossible for him to stay by not serving him or constantly moving him from table to table. And so the whole transsexual, these periods of favoritism are getting shorter and shorter. The Muslims were the favorites for a long time, and then the transsexuals, but that was a shorter period. I don't know who they're.
Now it's the pedophiles.
Yeah, okay, maybe they'll finally openly say we need to, we need to love and cherish and elevate pedophiles. I don't know. I don't know who they can go to next. They've run through the whole list of protected categories. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure they'll come up with somebody. But it's really, I mean, I saw a video of this poor girl. She was just 19 years old. When she was 8 years old, she got some nerve eating virus, and it initially left her paralyzed from the neck down, and then she regained the use of her legs, but she can't use her right arm, and she can't use her left arm, and her right arm is very weak, and her arms are so thin that they almost defy belief. And all she does is complain about people. She complains about ableism, and it's like, okay, you're a very, very, very interesting looking person, and the average person is going to look at you and go, what is that? And either you can complain about it, or you can accept that it's going to happen. You can roll with it. I mean, okay, it's wrong to. Okay, I hear people who have some affliction. Okay, dwarves, for example. They always say that the first question people ask them is, what are you? Now, I can't think of a more like bizarre thing to ask a dwarf. I've known several dwarves, and we never talked about dwarfism the whole time I knew them. The subject never came up. But I guess
Why would it?
Well, I guess for a lot of people, when you meet a dwarf, you have to start talking about dwarfism. I don't know, but it's this endless source of victimhood and complaint, and complaint ranging up to outrage. It's all sort of run its course by now, and everybody, the majority of the people in this country are just tired of hearing it, and and that's because the people pushing this stuff went too far. They overreached, and they became crazy to the point where they were putting men in women's volleyball teams, and the women were ending up with literal broken faces, and putting men in women's prisons, and the women were ending up getting raped or having, voluntarily getting pregnant. It went crazy. We had that entity in the red dressing gown with the shaved head and the beard stealing suitcases, and we were told, this is perfectly normal. Not only that, it's wonderful. We should all applaud this person. And it's like, no, this person is horrifying. This person is utterly off-putting, and it turns out this person is also a habitual criminal. So I don't know. It all went crazy. they pushed it too hard, too fast. Once they thought that, I guess Carville said at the beginning of Biden's term that
Yes.
the Democrats were going to be in power for the next 45 years. It's like, you can't be.
The military took power in Argentina in 76, announcing that they would be in charge for 100 years. Uh, turned out to be 7. Hitler launched a 1,000-year Reich.
Yep.
The 1,000-year Reich didn't make it to 5. The Soviets, the Bolsheviks, launched a new system for mankind for eternity. 70 years later, you have to look for them in the cemetery of stupid ideas. Somehow, all of these imbeciles always think they are forever. Carville was actually believed that the Democrats would hold power for 40 years because after Trump. Well, what can I say? You're not the first idiot, nor the biggest one. Raging Cajun deer. No, it wasn't the economy. Stupid. It was Ross Perot. No, you're not going to be here 40 years. You're going in 4. I would suggest to Trump supporters that kind of triumphalism always comes back to bite you in the ass. It leads to not doing your job because you think it's okay, we already won. Now there are many who think that the Democrats won't come back to power for another 40 years or 30 years. And they would be making the same mistake Carville did.
They could easily take the House in 2 years.
Yes, very easily. If I had a dime for every fucking moron who's been talking about the ample mandate, and we have the House, the Senate, and this and that, the majority in the House is paper thin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy to keep it. We could jolly well end with a 15-seat majority or a 15-seat minority, and it would be far from being a record in either direction. So,
well,
triumphalism is wrong, and complacency is self-defeating. So don't think you got it, and you have to start working now to ensure that we still have a majority on January 1st, 27.
Newt Gingrich had a record-breaking majority in the House, and how long did that last?
Oh, until Newt Gingrich decided to burn everything on the altar of a blowjob. Because when Newt Gingrich went after Clinton over Monica Lewinsky, of all the hideous things that the Clintons did, the best thing this moron could come up with was a blowjob.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it turns out he was banging his secretary, a very Catholic gal,
Mm-hmm.
who was verily committing adultery under the desk. And eventually, however, was probably pardoned and saved because he converted to Catholicism on her account, and she ended up as an ambassador to the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this hypocrisy that I am kind of making fun of right now, is what led to the Republicans losing what seemed an unassailable majority 2 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It is absurd that people still think that one election changes everything. It doesn't. We have the most. And by the way, oh God, it's a good thing that for once most Republicans didn't fall for the bullshit, and only that incredibly stupid Massey ended up not voting for Johnson. Because can you imagine if we had had again 5 6 weeks of not having a speaker and not setting up the commissions and delaying everything like they did last time?
Well, Massey is a clown. Massey likes to go on, and Massey likes to hear himself talk. And it would have been much smarter if the Republicans had provided a unanimous vote on the first vote. Then that would have been a giant broomstick up the butts of the Democrats. And Massey wasn't smart enough to do that. He was too busy posturing and blowing his
He's an
own horn.
imbecile.
Yeah.
The guy is an imbecile. The other two idiots obviously had a come to Jesus moment
Mm-hmm.
and changed their votes before the voting was closed, which led a lot of charlatans online to show how stupid they are because they had already declared that the first vote was lost when in fact it wasn't even closed. And by the time these two changed their votes, it was holding one. Uh, but we can do without these shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me now where is uh, um, Matt Gaetz? Uh, he's found his place under the sun. He is the head bullshitter at an OAN news commentary program. He's kind of like an underdeveloped Jesse Walker, Waters,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes over there and pretends to be an anchor, and just like he pretended to be a congressman before that. And I think overall he did well. He has a salary, and he's already forgotten.
Yeah, I
Already
mean
forgotten.
that's the thing. It's like, okay, Matt Gates, a real force to reckon with in the future, and then he's gone. So you
And by the way, his first show was with Massey over stopping Johnson.
mhm, yeah.
Mind bending morons. It,
No, I mean what people don't understand. I mean, you know, there's some some old saying about you shouldn't watch either the making of sausages or politics because it's disgusting. And
yes.
that's the thing. It's all horse trading, and so
Yes.
Johnson had to do a lot of horse trading before. He says he's not going to do it this time, and you
He,
know
he is. He is. He has no choice.
it all depends on the Republicans. I mean,
Yes. He,
he'll obviously do horse trading within the Republican Party, but you know,
and with some Democrats as well. Because if he can peel 10 Democrats, he can afford to lose a couple of morons.
well, Hakeem
That, that,
Jeffries
that is the way it's done.
after Johnson's speech, Hakeem Jeffries came out and started talking about how we need unity and the Republicans are never about unity, and it's just like, Hakeem, you're a joke. You're a joke. You're a cartoon character. Even your name, I mean, everything about you is cartoonish, and every word plopping out of your mouth is a cartoon word, and it's just
The Democrats in Congress, when they had the speakership, systematically shut the door in front of all Republicans.
mhm.
Did not even the J6 committee. They ended up with these two clowns, Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, uh, because they rejected all of the Republicans nominated by the minority leader. And then when they realized they had only Democrats, they put these two real rhinos. I don't like the expression, but in this case, Republicans in name only fits perfectly well. Uh, but the Republican Party was locked out of it. When they did Obamacare, they purposely did not allow Republicans to participate in discussions crafting the bill. So now they're talking about unity. Unite my genital situation, for crying out loud. No, there is no unity. You have to be blown out of the discussion. Tell somebody else to come here, not Jeffries.
Well, also, okay, Liz Cheney lost her election by what, 40 points? I mean,
Yeah, she was obliterated.
she was obliterated, and Liz Cheney was going to be a fixture. She was going to stay in the House forever because she had such
Cheney.
big. She was a Cheney. She had the big money behind her, and I'm sure she didn't. One of the complaints of her constituents was that she didn't even bother to come back during election season. She just assumed that they would always vote for her, and so they didn't. And then Kamala, in her infinite wisdom, decided to campaign with her, and everyone went, "What?"
Yeah. Now, the only way that Johnson makes uh, Massey totally irrelevant, I mean, by himself, he is irrelevant. Yeah? Unless somebody gets sick. It's that feeble a position. But the way you make it totally relevant is by horse trading with a half dozen to a dozen Democrats that would abandon party discipline and vote for you because they're getting such a sweet deal for their uh, uh, um, jurisdiction for their constituents that they cannot afford to say no, and they're gonna get it, and that may be $300 million for a wooden arrowhead factory in Arizona or some shit like that. That's how it works. Um, by the way, I didn't finish my thought on the gas because I was sidelined by my own uh, uh, reaction to my gas bill this month. But what I was trying to say before, Gazprom used to be the engine of the Russian economy. It used to supply 200 billion a year into the Russian economy, which over there is a shit ton of money. This year, for the first time in 20 some years, since the mid 90s, Gazprom is posting a loss. They're not only not contributing money to the Russian economy, they're siphoning money off of the Russian economy. Their exports have dropped by 90%. Their only markets left are China, who doesn't want any more gas, Iran, who can't afford any more gas, and that's it. Turkey, by the way, is working overtime on gas pipes from Azerbaijan. And was it Turkmenistan? From Azerbaijan, eh, and they already have existing pipelines into Greece and all that jazz, to start pumping oil from the lower Caucasus and Kurdistan to Europe. Russia is in big doo-doo. The loss of sales is never their lost sales are never coming back.
Mhm.
This is it. They have they will have no means to rebuild. The only thing they can negotiate today is a quick end to the war, return of territory to Ukraine to the 1991 borders, a compromise never to ever attack any other neighboring country again. Will cross my heart and hope to die. And please lift sanctions and give us some gas contracts. Because if not, they're going to be eating each other in 2 years. This is going to be worse than Venezuela.
Oh yeah. I mean, imagine Venezuela with like deadly winters.
I was thinking the same thing. Venezuela with not even deadly, with 20 below, no gas, no electricity. Whoop-de-doo. Um, oh, somebody's very optimistic in our chat, Thomas.
Mhm.
Monica Blues is saying, who knew that it would be Marjorie Taylor Greene who would grow some brain cells? Who says she did? Maybe she's expecting something in return for her loyalty. She's not expecting, she's already got it. And it is a chairmanship in a committee. But I'll let you read it in the newspapers in a few days. Um, why is that important? Because that turns into more campaign funds. You are more marketable as a chairman of a committee. Amazing how this works, huh? The making of sausages, Thomas, you're absolutely right, is a disgusting procedure. But we haven't come up with a better one yet.
No, and you know, there's nothing wrong with the system. The only bug in the you know in the system is humans, and humans are they're deeply flawed. You would wish that when somebody got to Washington, they wouldn't do things like insider trading and you know just things that harm their constituents or not their constituents but the rest of the country. You know, but they do, and they've always done it.
They've always done it. You can force them to relinquish control of their assets. So they relinquish control of their assets to their husbands or their wives or cousin Jimmy. And of course, then they proceed to pass on tips as the occasion permits, and still goes. You can the, there are only two things you can do. One, the American public is not too keen on doing, which is paying them enough money so that it's more difficult to tempt them, and making transgressions far more expensive in terms of liberty. So if I catch you or anybody you know using information that you know from a committee to trade ahead of the news, you get 20 years in jail, and you get first expelled from the House, and then you get or the Senate, and then you get 20 years in jail, um, mandatory. So if you make enough money, and a transgression would cost you that much, then you might, and I mean just might, um, behave. Now, I don't know many Americans who would agree that you have to pay good money to legislators and incidentally to secretaries, to all members of the cabinet. And I think it should be done like you do with CEOs of companies with billions of dollars in sales. Or You're asking for trouble because you get this freaking moron who can hardly make the mortgage on their house in Iowa, and you put the greatest temptation right next to them. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, just the fact that you have these people going into office and leaving office multimillionaires with no possible, no ability to show how they did that.
Yeah,
uh,
amazing, huh? But on the other hand, if you create the circumstances for that, shame on you too.
well, that's the thing. I mean, the country voted for the right two people in 2024, but it took somebody as extreme as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Mhm.
Against Harris and Walz, Trump and Vance should have gotten 90% of the popular vote, um, but they didn't. They did win the popular vote, but it was very close to half the country either voted for somebody else or voted for those two, and that's a pretty shocking thing. Like Tim Walz, think about it. Tim Walz, if you ever saw him, whenever he would make these appearances, and he would walk down what looked like a model's runway, going like this to everybody. Just he was one of the most off-putting people I've ever encountered.
The only thing creepier than Tim Walz is his wife.
Yeah, yeah. No,
The two of them together, holy shit.
and they had
But,
a they
but,
had
like,
a
but like you
creepy.
said, it took these two subnormal entities for the Democrats to lose. And when you look at the House, you know how close the thing really is. I mean, okay, we have idiots in the Republican Party too. People like Massey. Definitely, we have imbeciles. Uh, as you know, I'm not particularly fond of Marjorie Taylor Greene and others. But the majority of Democrats are cringy sons of bitches. Otherwise, how can you end up with Hakeem Jeffries as their caucus leader?
Well, CNN had this congresswoman on who I'd never heard of, and she was like a bad ethnic joke. She was like a ghetto queen, and the way she was speaking, and it was embarrassing. And she was talking about how since Kamala lost, she wasn't even slightly interested in the inauguration, and she I don't know. It was gross, and it was skin crawling. Like, I couldn't stand to hear her speak because she sounded like a put on. She sounded like Howard Stern pretending to be a black person, that sort of thing. And she sounded like an Amos and Andy character, and it's just and that is what people go for in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
No,
I
Tim
mean,
Walz.
they are truly amazing in their ability to pick morons. Like I said, we have many, but the Democrats collect them for crying out loud.
Well, Tim Walz and his wife were creepy. They had a creepy daughter. Then they had this weird son who was always crying in public. This adult son who was, or late teens or whatever, but he was like sobbing uncontrollably as his father spoke on stage, and it was just like everybody in this family is they're a basket case. It's horrendous. I don't know. It was a terrible, terrible situation, and it's shocking to think. It's just like realizing again. Oh, John Kerry spent 3 months in Vietnam. Kamala spent 3 months campaigning. That was it. She was on the campaign trail for 3 months, and of those 3 months,
She spent years on her knees. Come on.
yeah.
She's been sucking her way up the ladder since the 90s. It's
But it was
not
that,
just once.
and I wasn't privy to her promotion sessions, but I did get to see her campaign, and it was shocking to realize that it was only 3 months long. It seemed like it went
Yeah,
on forever.
I know. It would never end, would it? But, you know, fortunately, the American people are not that stupid yet. And the Democrats couldn't pull this one in. Some comedian, I don't know her. This is the first I've seen of her. That the Democrats couldn't campaign that much because they were too busy holding the corpse. It was like Wicked at Bernie's.
Yeah, was that
And
the
there's a point.
CNN had some comedian to ring in the new year, and she went on this long spiel about how ridiculous the Democrats were, and they couldn't shut her off because they were getting close to the countdown. Uh,
Yeah, the Vanderbilt girl was there. She didn't like it.
no, it's just
You
ridiculous.
know
They're,
who
they're
you know who I'm talking about.
Anderson.
Yeah, and Whitney Cummings, they're telling us is this gal.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's funny or not because that's the only thing I've seen of hers ever. Mhm.
Well, I
That
mean,
was
there's a guy who used to be funny. His name is Jim Gaffigan, and Jim Gaffigan suddenly decided to throw it all out the window. Jim Gaffigan used to be really funny, um, but he decided to throw it all out the window and go political. And now he regrets losing half his audience. And it's like
uh,
you're you're a middle aged man. You didn't know this was going to happen? Like why would a Trump supporter watch you when you were literally saying fuck Trump supporters? I don't know. I the mind boggles again because
it would be like me complaining because MAGA tards don't like me.
well, it's just if you're trying to sell something, it's not good business sense to like totally alienate half your audience. And you know, that's not to. I mean, okay, if you're selling something like your act as a comedian, you don't have to go political. The
No,
comedian the
and
comedian
and,
Scott
and, and
Thompson
if you do, you can keep a balance like so many have.
the comedian Scott Thompson said that the best comedy show is when you walk out and you say, I don't know what that guy's politics are. And
Mm.
I happen to agree with him. Um, I mean,
Yep.
I don't remember comedians being especially political. Robin Williams was one of the first ones. He started being political back when Reagan was president, and his political jokes weren't very funny.
George Carlin.
Yeah, Carlin was political, but his other stuff was much funnier than his political stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And then of course, somebody who I never thought of as a comedian, but that's the way she was built, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah,
She was always with that melodramatic socialist babble that really in the early 80s I thought it was disgraceful. Remember, she used to do a character like a Jamaican and always ended up in some kind of melodramatic mood. And I never understood what people saw in her.
Well, it was the fact that she got famous when she was really young. She got famous because she could do like a perfect Valley Girl voice. Her name was Goldberg. She was, a black woman named Goldberg, even though that's not her real name. And so she was. What made her famous was her oddity, because her initial act was more like performance artist than anything else, performance art. Um, but that was decades ago. She was really young. She was probably in her early 20s. Um,
Yeah, I'm talking about the early 80s.
yeah, I don't know. I only saw her do her Valley Girl stuff once. But okay, the comedian so-called Kathy Griffin is now, she's been unable to sell any tickets to her shows, and she claims that Trump has personally prevented these sales, and that
Oh,
any day now, as soon as Trump is sworn in, he's going to grab her and send her to a concentration camp. And she's begging people to save her from this fate by buying her tickets. And as multiple people have pointed out, when you're starting to beg people to buy your tickets, that's time to like hang it up. You're done. Um, you know,
she hasn't been funny in 30 years. I'm surprised she lasted this long.
well, she got famous for a commercial. It was a telephone commercial, and the ad was about, imagine this without that. Uh, uh, it would be like a song without music, and so she was singing that song, play that funky music, but she was just speaking it. There was no music, and there were all these people dancing silently with no music. You could just hear like their footsteps squeaking and everything. And she was like, till you die, till you die. And just her delivery was really, she was very striking. And that's what put her on the map, was that commercial. Everyone wanted to know, okay, who's that person? But she was never really able, like she would appear on Seinfeld, and the bit on Seinfeld was that she was a stand-up comedian who wasn't funny, and it's like
Didn't have
that's
to
her
act
in real
much.
life. I mean,
Yeah, no method
yeah, she's
acting
not funny.
necessary for
Um,
this.
yeah, I don't know. And one of the radio hosts, he was the first California radio host to put her on the air and get an interview her for like a whole hour. And he met her again years later, and he introduced himself, and he said she just looked at him and went, And he said, remember, I put you on the air, and she said, but what have you done for me lately? And it's
Okay.
like, whoa, you you obviously don't understand that if you make nothing but enemies on the way up, nobody's going to help you on the way down. In fact,
No,
they're going to,
nobody's gonna try to. Yeah, nobody's gonna try to catch you or break your fall.
yep.
Uh, they're gonna make room so you fall farther.
Yeah, she lost her husband, she lost her house. She's hit really hard times, and she blames it all on Trump. But it's like, okay, you've wrecked your face with plastic surgery. You're not funny, and you've alienated half the country. And she keeps insisting on trying to tour like Trump country, and it's like, does your manager hate you? Like what's going on?
She should probably stick to a couple of comedy clubs in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
port, and hope that those equally deranged individuals with money, I can see her having a sold out audience of 40 in, say, Sausalito. Uh, that should keep her Tiny, who should help her pay the rent. And if she does that long enough, they may find other like venues for her. But the idea that she's going to tour the country is like, I cannot think of anything anybody could say, do, offer me for me to go and watch one of her shows for free.
No, I have no interest. You mentioned San Francisco. My brother watches a guy on YouTube, and what he does is he goes around and he he takes these walks and he chronicles which the next store that's just closed. And he did a tour of Fisherman's Wharf, and my brother was there 10 years ago, and he went to Fisherman's Wharf, and it was still this totally lively place. He said in this video, every single store was shuttered, every restaurant, everything. All of Fisherman's Wharf was shut down. And I was just thinking, what is San Francisco going to do? It has no, there's nothing left, like no tourist spots, nothing. How are they going to survive? The they I guess they got rid of that insane mayor, but
You
they
got
didn't.
another.
It's like what they did in Chicago. They replaced the Beetlejuice woman with somebody who's infinitely worse, and
Yeah.
so it's just. I mean, when I was in San Francisco, everywhere you walked, you smelled the stink of urine. But other than that, the place was still very habitable. I mean, I lived there from 91 to 93. And then I visited it off and on until about 2000. But by all accounts, it's this horrific, like zombie town. It's a disaster. And
I used to love it there in the 80s. I thought it was one of the two most livable cities in America.
yeah,
The last time I went there was in 2007, and I swore I would never go back. Eh, The it is painful for me to see what they have done to it. Now, what are they gonna do? Well, many are not living in San Francisco at all. They've gone to Martinez. They've gone to other places where they can live, in nice houses on Wildcat Canyon or uh, away the fuck away from Oakland or Berkeley or San Pablo or downtown Frisco, maybe Half Moon Bay. Those people who are out of the city and all the jazz can manage to maintain a quality life, but without the big city around them anymore because nobody wants to go there. The one thing that San Francisco has as an advantage to, say, Detroit is the place. The hills, the bay, the ocean, the Golden Gate. That place is absolutely fucking gorgeous. And eventually it's gonna be cleaned like New York was cleaned in the 90s. They're gonna be run out of there with packs of bills, with people buying and restoring and cleaning once the city administration finally collapses and somebody with a brain is elected. But it has to collapse fully before it can bounce. None of these imbeciles have the brains. Now they're beginning to figure out maybe if we control theft and we enforce the laws and we jail people who go into stores in gangs and steal everything on the shelves, maybe, just maybe, we can retain commerce. They don't have a clue, do they?
No, and see, that's the sort of thing that's going to happen only once in terms of Americans are never going to go back or leftist states once they do reverse, they start putting people in jail again. They're never going to go back to this notion of decriminalizing crime. Like when Daniel Penny was acquitted in New York, Black Lives Matter came out to protest, and they got 20 people. The only people marching in New York are the pro-Palestinians, because the Palestinians are, they're like the hotness of the moment. But once the Israelis finish off Hamas permanently, nobody's ever going to march for Palestine again. They'll have moved on to something else. But the whole BLM thing, they went too far. All their leaders used the donations to buy mansions, and everybody, like they lost interest in it. And the
Without Obama,
yeah,
BLM is nothing.
okay. The comedian Zach Galifianakis asked Obama, "What's it like to be the last black president?" And I don't think that's true, but his point was that Obama was so horrible that
Yeah.
People would associate that with his race. And Obama played up his race. He said he wouldn't, and then of course he did. And he was even well, I would say more so by his supporters. He was the black president. He wasn't the president. He was the black president. And all of that stuff it's finally starting to lose its power. It's taken much longer than other isms, but finally racism, calling someone a racist is now sort of a punchline. Everybody goes, of course.
Naturally.
Yeah. So
Naturally.
it's Los Angeles repealed a lot of Proposition 47, which decriminalized crime, and now the cops are arresting people for shoplifting again. And
Amazing.
yeah, what people don't understand is that there's a certain percentage of the population that needs to be in prison, so you do need to build more prisons. That's just the simple.
And as the general population grows, the number of people in jail will grow too.
Yeah, you need to build more prisons.
Yes.
You can't just keep cramming larger and larger amounts of people into the same prison. You build more prisons. You expand the prisons, and people think that's somehow inhumane. I remember when Ocasio-Cortez said people don't belong in cages, and I thought, oh, what a stupid thing to say. Some people do, but she was serious, and an entire movement came about where
Yes.
we're not going to put anybody in cages for any reasons, and California paid the price, probably more so.
I wonder if the place where they kept me in Argentina is available. It wasn't a cage. We can put him there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dungeon. It was a hole in the ground, right?
Yes, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not a cage.
Well,
What a stupid thing to say. Yes, some people belong behind bars.
yeah,
And the other thing that I would say is stop using our jails as a substitute for mental hospitals.
yeah. Just reopen the mental hospitals. That's all.
Yes.
Get the Supreme Court to repeal the 1976 law that says that if a person can survive on the streets, you can't put them in a mental institution. Just get rid of that, and
Yeah.
And I know there's right wingers who
Huh?
think that that'll allow the government to put political dissenters in prison.
Oh,
But
that's bullshit.
well,
And by the way, weren't the
this is
J6s put in prison for months without charges?
well, this isn't 1976. We know a hell of a lot more about mental illnesses. We can treat them better, and we have to make it. If okay, mental institutions used to run fine until the do-gooders got involved, and and then also, of course, politicians always stole the funds for the mental institutions. I keep hearing
But
people.
many of them were wonderful institutions up until the day they closed them.
I keep hearing people blaming Reagan for closing the mental hospitals. He didn't. What he did was he provided block grants that people didn't use, and so the hospitals were closed because the block grants didn't go to the hospitals. They were supposed to, but they didn't.
Yeah, and he did that because with the Carter administration, they passed this law that mandated the closing of the hospitals.
Well, it started with JFK with the Community Mental Health Act that was going to close the institutions and open community clinics where our psychotics and our criminally insane would voluntarily show up for treatment, outpatient treatment. And this is childish. This is childish. The ugly reality is that some people need to belong. Some people belong in prisons, and others need to be institutionalized because they're not viable.
And that is the actual humane thing to do.
Yeah,
To put somebody where they're gonna get the treatment they need.
yeah.
It's what needs to be done. My argument in the early 80s in NYU, when people were arguing for the closing of mental institutions and all the jazz, and against the commitment of people to mental institutions, involuntary commitments, because that would make us like the Soviet Union that puts political opponents in mental institutions. Yeah, well, but that you gotta be a fucking Bolshevik first, you asshole.
Yeah, we're not the Soviet Union. And
We're not the Soviet Union, and the Democrats, when they need to put people in jail, they don't use euphemisms like mental institutions. They put you in fucking jail, and they use the system to punish you. And by the time you are declared innocent and walk away, you've already spent 2 years in solitary confinement or 7 years of lawsuits. So they can still do it. It's not a question of mental institution. On the other hand, to deprive people who could be treated and have a better quality of life, to deprive them of that treatment, that's cruel. To let people die on the streets of exposure. I remember in the early 80s the morgue van driving around Canal Street and what would be NoHo, um, the Canal Street area between Canal Street and City Hall, picking up the corpses of those that had died the night before after a particularly cold night. I've seen the van. I've seen them load corpses on it. Near there was a Salvation Army thing on Lafayette Street near Canal Street where people went for food, and then they would seek refuge in the entrances to buildings and on top of the subway grates. And in a harsh winter, there would every day there would be another 5 to 10 dead
well,
because they could survive outside. Well, not really, can they?
going back to the dishonest media, there was a report that showed New York filling mass graves with corpses, and they claimed that these were COVID victims. No, this was New York's Potter's Field. This was all the
Yes,
unclaimed bodies that there were no instructions what to do with them. This was a routine in New York.
there was routine over where Rikers Island is.
Yep. And to imagine that this, yeah, I mean, okay, the right wing fear of having the government having the power to commit you in a mental institution. There's abuses in every institution, but that doesn't mean you abolish the entire institution. I mean, obviously there's going to be somebody who's going to try and get their husband or wife committed so they can get their hands on their money or whatever.
Yeah, but they would have to go over a medical. Uh, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? Counsel, but um,
Yeah. I mean,
like
there has
3 to 5 doctors would have to agree, and
there
a
has to be
judge
a process. Exactly.
there is a process. So it's not that I claim my wife is crazy so I can get to her bank account.
Yeah, and the
It's
judge
not
brings down the gavel and says, "Okay, you're crazy." No, it's not going to depend
no,
on the judge.
and it's not going to depend on one doctor either.
No.
It never did. So, and the left will tell you this bullshit freedom of choice type of shit. Uh, the argument they always presented me with is you cannot look up somebody without their consent. And I said, listen, can a 4-year-old consent to a sexual act? No. Can a crazy person consent to anything?
No, I mean,
No, they can't. By definition, they cannot. They don't have corpus mentis.
no,
They
and
have no
and
idea what the fuck they're talking about.
and as a general, I mean, the people think that it's like psychotics, schizophrenics, and they're the most violent ones, but it's actually depressives, people with
Yes.
depressive disorder, and antisocial personality disorder, and
Yep.
things like that. They're the most violent, and there are some people that as far as the medical literature goes today, they are incurable, in the sense that
Yes.
there are certain disorders that these are people who are never going to stop victimizing others, and they don't respond to medication, they don't respond to talk therapy, they continue committing crimes, and it's like, okay, they have to go somewhere where they can't hurt people. And again,
The criminally insane.
yeah, the mental health field has as compared to 1980, we've leaped ahead 200 years in
Yeah.
comparison. And if we do reopen our institutions, okay, for one thing, mass shooters are all identical, and they
Yeah.
always warn about what they're going to do. So if somebody
There's
starts
always signals.
blathering about committing a mass shooting, and you find guns and maps and all that, you put them in the institution, and you keep them there for a year or two, and you do what you can for them, and you've avoided a mass shooting. All mass shooters are exactly the same, and until we start recognizing that it's a mental issue and not a gun issue, There was a mass shooting at some religious school, and the Democrats started jibber jabbering about, banning assault rifles. She used a handgun, or she used two handguns.
Yeah.
So
No, but the whole thing. I mean, well, of course, now we have the asshole in New Orleans who rams a pickup truck through people, uh, and I saw, the headlines: truck runs over people in sidewalk.
yeah, the truck just started itself up,
The
and
truck did it.
yeah,
I should have known.
yeah,
Eh, Two backpacks killed 10 people in Spain,
yeah.
literally. The headline was two backpacks killed 10 people. I said, "Whoa, malevolent backpacks! It's amazing the perversity of inanimate objects is reached levels unthought of. Now we have trucks killing people, backpacks killing people, guns killing people. It's never a crazy son of a bitch pulling the trigger, driving the truck, or dropping the backpack, is it?"
And I don't understand the difficulty in saying man runs down 15 people, kills 15 people in New Orleans. You know,
How, well, because it allows for disassociation. So this is the people committing these crimes are not the only delusional fuckers out there.
well, and
If
also,
you do,
I guess, who are
Mhm.
we to judge?
in you see, if you do not want to recognize the role played by mental health in these issues, then you deflect from the person to the weapon. It was the car that killed people, not a paranoid, delusional son of a bitch. It was the backpack, not the terrorists we let in through the border. By the way, the guys who did the backpack thing in Spain, like the guy over here, all illegal aliens, all people that come into countries unvetted. And you're not gonna say the people I let in and gave them documents and money and allowed to make a foothold in your community just killed 20 of you. No, the car did it. It's easier to explain, but it is also delusional.
Well, I mean, this whole notion that you're gonna let the general population be murdered en masse because you don't want to admit that your ideology is flawed. It's an amazing sort of thing, and you know,
Michael is adding here Tesla truck explodes in front of Trump Hotel.
sure, it just blew
How
up.
dare that? Yeah, that son of a bitch truck, how dare it? Which, of
It drove
course,
up on its own and just blew up.
well, they claimed it drove by itself with a dead body in it, except that the self driving does not operate that way. And then there are videos of the guy stopping 8 times to charge it. Obviously, he wasn't in a hurry. It's like, no, it is delusional. It is a refusal to acknowledge reality.
Well, one could argue that the entire party is a refusal. The whole platform is a refusal to acknowledge reality. Um,
Yeah, well, socialists do have that in common. That's why I always say that socialism is a mental illness. I started as a joke. Now I'm beginning to believe it.
well, the extreme far leftist wing of the Democratic Party, which apparently is going to take ever greater control over it. If you listen to the pundits explaining why they lost, and the voices calling for Ocasio-Cortez to run.
Run for what? Run from what?
Well, I want to see your debate J.D. Vance. That would be phenomenal. Do three debates.
I'd like to see her debate me. I swear to God, within a half an hour, she'll be crying. Nobody can be that stupid.
Well,
and be able to walk and breathe at the same time.
It's pretty amazing. Like what has she done in Congress?
Agitate.
Yeah.
Agitate. These brainless drones are only good to follow the script and agitate.
I guess she wanted the chair of some committee and Pelosi blocked her.
Yes. And I'm pretty damn sure she's not going to see a chair of any committee anytime soon. She'll be glad to get backseated a couple of committees now, because Hakeem Jeffries is not too keen on even putting her as a ranking member on anything. Some of these idiots, they're idiots. There are stupid idiots, and there are Ocasio-Cortez level idiots in the Democratic Party. Even the regular idiots don't trust this. And they know what they've done to the party.
When she tried to grill Tom Homan, she was like a straight man feeding lines to the stand-up comedian. Like every single thing she said, his reply, he would just like bash it right out of the park.
Oh yeah.
She had nothing to say. She just kept doggedly trying to get him to admit that we split up families when he was saying not only that we split up families when we put Americans in jail, we do it every day. And then she said, is there any way to keep from splitting up families? And he said, yeah, deport the whole family.
I've been saying that. Do you remember a long time ago, I think it was in 2017, when they brought up this splitting family shit against Trump? Because they took pictures of children behind wires, which of course were from the Obama presidency, incidentally. Yep. And they're separating families. They arrest the parents and they put their children in hold here. And I remember I started posting pictures of soldiers, going to war, leaving their children behind. This is the kind of family separation I'm worried about. Every day we ask our police officers, our soldiers, our airmen to go to the front and leave their families. Some for a day, some for a year or more. How do we keep them together? We send the kids to Bora Bora?
Well,
if our soldiers can leave their children, and of course, every time you jail somebody who committed a crime, every time you jail a husband who killed his wife, you have newly orphaned children. So what do? You let the guy walk to protect the right of the children to have a parent with them? How stupid is that?
Well, the reason they separated the children was because they didn't want to put the children in with adult criminals. They don't have a separate cage for every married couple that's crossing the border. They're put in cages where there are all sorts of predatory adults around.
Yes, it's something that, of course, Joe Biden would demand happen because he believes in the rights of fellow pederasts. He cannot conceive of the idea of not having. What the hell's going on there? Uh,
They're shooting off their rockets. What's today?
oh
January
crap!
4th. So it's January 4th. So let's go shoot off some skyrockets.
Yeah, it's New Year Eve's leftover rockets. Holy crap!
No, I don't
Oh
know.
my god!
I mean, these are the quality of life. Okay, the house across the street was owned by this ancient Basque American, and he finally died. And then his caretaker claimed that he had left the house to her. He had no will, and he had no children, he had no will. So his nieces and nephews and the caretaker, who was one of the biggest con artists I've ever seen in my life, when he was alive, she said, I don't want anything from him. As soon as he died, she filed papers for ownership of the house, and the children did too. It was a 10-year legal battle. Now, lawyers don't, and apparently this guy left $1 million. So you figure a 10-year legal battle. I think the only reason it stopped was because the lawyers ate up the entire $1 million.
The $1 million, yeah.
But a
And the
Chinese
house
family
wasn't enough
moved
to
in,
pay the rent.
and I breathed a huge sigh of relief because the Chinese make great neighbors. They're very quiet, and um, they don't cause any problems. But every time a house goes up for sale on the street, I keep my fingers crossed, because if it's Mexican people, they're going to bring with them loud music, barking dogs, screaming children, and skyrockets. It's completely axiomatic. And
Yes, it comes with the territory.
it comes with the territory, and I don't get it. It was funny. The leftists were complaining. Whoopi Goldberg. They were complaining about all the Hispanic Americans, the Latinos who voted for Trump, and they were saying, "Don't you know that he's gonna put all your illegal relatives? He's gonna deport them." And it's like, what makes you think that the people who
Oh,
voted for Trump have illegal aliens as relatives living in this country? There
oh boy.
there are Hispanic Americans who are not only not illegal, none of their relatives are
The
illegal.
racist bitch.
Yeah, she actually said that.
Somebody has to tell that racist bitch that the Alvarados and the Castros were in California long before the first gringo arrived.
Sure.
And I'm giving those two names, which you know because you're in California, but most people know. Juan Bautista Alvarado and Castro were two ranchers in Northern California that actually were instrumental in the declaration of the Republic of California and separation from Mexico 10 years before it became a state. And Alvarado, I understand, was the last governor of Alta California and the first president of the Republic of California. Eh, tell those people, tell the descendants of those people that they should vote Democrat to protect their wetback relatives. I mean, they're insane. They're not only stupid and racist and bigoted, they're insane.
Well, on my mother's side of the family, there were the Yorbas, and then there were the Rolands. And Roland is what, a British.
French,
Pardon me.
Roland, either French or if it is British, it's Norman.
Okay, they were Mexicans whose name were Roland, and my what was he? I guess he's my third great grandfather. His name was William A. Rowland, and he was the first Hispanic sheriff of Los Angeles County, and he was also the youngest sheriff to this day. He was 27 when he got the job, and um, you know, he was the sheriff of Los Angeles County. He wasn't an illegal alien,
Yeah.
and he happened to do a pretty good job, and he was elected twice.
Much better than anything that's been done today, for sure.
Oh yeah, and but in Whoopi's mind, I mean, okay, there was a brilliant Mexican American actress, and she said the shame of my career is that 90% of my roles I'm playing a maid, and that's because the people making the movies see Mexican Americans as maids, and so she was
And
always
they're all leftists.
what's that?
And they're all leftists.
Yeah, exactly. And Whoopi Goldberg sees Mexican Americans as either the menial help or illegals. So her little brain can't understand that there are plenty of Hispanic Americans who are conservative and who have no illegal, maybe their parents or grandparents came here, but they came here legally, and they don't like illegals any more than anybody else. There's no fraternity.
Let me put it this way: your mother is Mexican,
Yeah,
was Mexican. It, how many wetback relatives or friends do you have?
zero.
Okay, my as you know, I was born in, as you were born in Venezuela, I was born in Argentina. How many wetbacks relatives or friends do you think I have?
Zero.
Zero. And the as presumption that because you have some kind of contact with South America, Mexico, or otherwise, automatically makes you susceptible to this kind of bullshit. It is comparable. You see, I see Whoopi Goldberg as a grifter, not a cotton picker. Get it?
Well, if I asked Whoopi Goldberg if she was a good tap dancer, I mean, she would fall out of her chair and like make sure that I was never allowed on YouTube again,
Yeah.
because that would be a racist thing to say. I mean,
I just gave you an even worse example of racism. But you
sure,
see, I do see her as a grifter,
yeah,
period. I don't see her as any kind of prototype because they do that. I don't. I don't. I was taught from a very early age to judge people by their character. And I always have, and I always will. Not people like her. She's a fucking grifter who will judge people by the color of their skin or their country of birth or any parameter that is group wise, not individual. I'm concerned with individuals, she's concerned with groups. That tells you all you need to know.
also, I mean, this is a very childish view of the world that you know, um, it's like you always hear that most mass shooters are white males, and it's like, well, because white males dominate the population. Um, but if you look at mass shooters as a percentage of the population in that particular group, the most mass shooters per population per capita are Asian Americans, followed by
Yep.
Black Americans, followed by Native Americans, and whites. White males are in the fourth position.
Yep.
They in raw numbers they're the most, because in raw numbers they exist in larger numbers.
White Americans masturbate in greater numbers than black Americans.
Yeah.
or drink tea in greater numbers than Black Americans,
Yeah.
or brush their teeth in greater numbers than Black Americans, because there's simply so many more. I mean, blacks are 13% of the population. Now, in some cases, I'm not going to use examples in the US for a purpose, but they take the city of Barcelona. Immigrants commit 48% of the crimes. Not immigrants, illegal aliens.
Mm-hmm.
They commit 48% of the crimes. Non illegal immigrants, 52% of the crimes. So, see, mm, illegal immigrants commit less crimes than the local people, except that illegal immigrants are 8% of the population. So, 8% of the population commits 48% of the crimes. It's absurd. If you point it out, you're a racist.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to buy the official thing that it is traditional Catalans who commit the majority of crimes in Catalonia. You racist son of a bitch. They are insane when it comes to this because their determination to divide us by race, by religion, by how many times do you meet somebody? I said, Thomas, this is my friend Joseph. Oh, what religion are you in? The, how many people do you know that you have absolutely no idea what religion they practice?
Well, the majority of them.
Unless the conversation comes up in you know, just talking about something else. But for these people, religion, color, national origin, culture, you have to have an adjective on American. Black American, white American, Italian American, Polish American. Give me a fucking break. American needs no qualifier. And where his great grandparents came from doesn't mean shit. Not
Well, I
to
guess
mention the fact that probably they're all of the above, like the rest of us.
there's some big college football match coming up, and both coaches are black, and so the Notre Dame coach, that's all everyone wants to talk to him about, and he's had enough of it, and he wants to talk about something else, and so he's raising the ire of leftists because he doesn't know his place. It's
Cool.
his place to talk about his blackness, and you
Right.
know he's tired of it. He doesn't want to do it anymore.
No, let's see if in the next 4 years we can make a dent in this bullshit and get more people to join us in rejecting the politics of division that Democrats are trying to push on us all the time. Anyway, we're very close. So let me do my little appeal at the end when there's probably half the audience we had. Actually, there are 900 people watching right now. Holy crap, people. Thank you so much. You're sticking with us for this long. Are you as surprised as I am every time we do this?
No,
Any,
I have a lot of faith in our audience.
I, actually, I do too, but I still, well, I'm humbled, not surprised. Folks, this is free to watch, but by all means, it's not free to produce. It takes our time, it takes resources, it takes both monetary resources and technical resources. And we do need to finance all of this one way or another. And we do this without advertising, without sponsors, without collecting data from our viewers. We do this exclusively through the support of our viewers. If you want to support us and allow us to keep doing this for as long as you'll have the goodwill to put up with us and our health permits, please contribute to us, you can do this in several ways. You can, number one, first contribution is free. Come to Odyssey, click on the Odyssey link over there, and subscribe and click on notifications. That is going to help us because it's going to give us a greater audience. Second one is you can send a tip on the chat only on Odyssey, please, because YouTube takes half of what you said over there, and I think it is a pity to finance a platform that is such an enemy of liberty and freedom of speech. Just saying. So do it in Odyssey by clicking on the dollar sign on the screen and send us a message with your $5, $10, $20, whatever it is. The third way is clicking on support and making your one-time donation of any amount you want to the channel. The fourth way is to joining the channel as a member and making a monthly contribution to keep us running. The fifth way, look at that, we're giving you all the possible ways we can, is to come to our website, quadverum.com/support us. Very complicated verbiage there. Quadverum.com/support us. You can make a one-time contribution or a monthly contribution to keep both this channel and SQV or Quadverum Forum alive. And if you're in Twitter, and there are several hundred of you watching in Twitter right now, you can go to my timeline, not to Thomas's yet because he can't monetize, but eventually he will as well. Right now, you can go to my timeline at the Brother Lie and click on subscriptions and subscribe to it, $5 a month, which is coming to help this channel and all that jazz. So subscribe to the Brother Lie, come to Odyssey, and help us continue doing this for what is now going to be, hold on to this one, Thomas, our 6th year of doing the beer blather. This is the first
Wow.
chapter in the 6th year. I cannot believe that we haven't gotten bored yet. I guess there's always something to talk about. So I did
Yeah.
my shameless request for money. Please do. And with that, I don't have much more to say except tomorrow, 10:30 p.m. we have a quad meet where people can come in on screen and we have a discussion among several folks. And Tuesday, I'm going to have a VIP room for channel members only. So if you're going to make a contribution to the channel by joining the channel, do it before Tuesday, and you can join us at the VIP room. And that's it for me, Thomas. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? I know we left a whole bunch of things, but then again, we can talk about it next week. I'm pretty sure Ukraine is going to be there. Israel is still going to be kicking Hamas ass for as long as there is one alive. Did you see that they showed a video of one of the hostages
Mm-hmm.
taunting Israel?
Mm-hmm.
And then they were surprised that Israel bombed the living fuck out of every already identified Hamas meeting point.
Mm-hmm.
If they thought that we're going to get concessions, they want peace, release the hostages.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. I'm not sure they deserve peace at this point, but if there's any discussion at all, it should come after the release of every damn hostage, dead or alive. And I happen to think that the Arab countries tend to agree now.
Well, Trump has said that if they don't release the American hostages left alive, then they're going to regret it. So
Yep.
I believe him.
I believe him too, and I think that they're going to regret it. Putin is going to regret not talking when he could. And Giuliani may be the winner if he manages to keep this thing even killed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he can or not, we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, we may have something to say about Iran.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting with bated breath the next 48 hours.
Okay.
With that, any last word for us, my friend?
Hebitude.
Habitude?
Hebitude. Hebitude. Hebitude.
Habitude. Okay, thank you. You know, I'm hard of hearing, so
Mm-hmm.
thank you for the clarification. Habitude, my friends, and good night. And I'll see some of you tomorrow.